Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Extreme Studios in the Pinos Palace. And of course, that's just west of Orlando, Florida. I've got RDV from the Great Midwest. We're a few minutes late because he was in a storm shelter with a Cat 5 coming, and I was down here in my underground bunker, and hopefully we can survive an Armageddon coming at you, because that's the movie we're reviewing for tonight's stream. And RDV, I'm going to be honest with you. I saw this in the theaters when it came out. It's pure cheese. I know it's supposed to be popcorn fun, disaster films. There's several of them in the 90s. Within the first 5 minutes, the old feelings came back, and I want to sound as positive as possible. I did not particularly care for this movie. This is just trash in such a bad way. And I want you, being a 90s child, to explain to me what it is I'm missing. And we have an opportunity to do that here live tonight, discussing Armageddon, because I just, maybe it's Michael Bay. Maybe it's early Michael Bay. I just don't know. So help me out, sir.
Well, I had no idea this was even a Michael Bay film until I looked it up. I've watched it a couple times now. The thing with me is, when this one, I was kind of grown, and I was like, oh, I got to watch this, because I've already watched it a bunch of times. Not because it's a bad movie in any sense. If anything, this is like the Meg, but with the Meg actually makes money. Honestly, I forgot that Owen Wilson was even in this movie.
That's quite easy to happen, right? Because he had already been in
he was
Cable Guy, right? The Chicken Man. What's up with my Chicken Man? That's what I remember him. That's his best acting scene of all time.
Because I remember Meet the Parents, or it was after this. Well, after this, but this is 98. Obviously, what came out around this time was Bones, Bone Collector, which we also reviewed on this channel. Go check that out with Denzel. Also, Volcano came out. I think came out either the year before it. Mm-hmm. I think it was the year before, yeah. And then Dante's Peak was also on the same year in 97. So, no, going into this movie, and I'm watching again, I'm like, all right, I know what's going to happen. They're going to recruit them. They're going to go into space. Something's going to happen. They're going to lose one of the shuttles, blah, blah, blah. But it does touch on my heartstrings, situations like that, when people have to sacrifice themselves in order to save, So it is kind of a depressing mood, a bittersweet ending. But Michael Clarke Duncan, great to see him again. I haven't watched a movie with him in a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Seeing him in there, I think his name is Will Patton. I think it is, right?
Yep.
Will Patton. I forgot he's in this.
He's in Tommy Lee Jones' role.
Will Patton. We just saw him in Horizon.
Yes.
American Saga. He's in the last half of that film. Dude, like I said, I like this. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Ben Affleck at this time was kind of like, he was the annoying kid in pretty much everything. He was pretty much like the Ben Hurts. Where we see him later in The Mechanic. But honestly, I didn't think this was such a bad movie. I watched it again. I actually enjoyed it. It's a popcorn flip. I watched this not in the theater. I've only ever watched it on VHS.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got it from Blockbuster.
Okay.
So back when we could actually grab VHSs off the wall. I miss that, man. Get your Milk Duds, get your popcorn, overpriced popcorn, in your candy, your sour gummies, whatever. It's not the best movie, like I said. But I say it's a popcorn. It is a popcorn flick. A lot of the people thought it so too, because it did really well. It didn't bomb or flop, It was, and I gotta say, I enjoyed it. What I liked about it was Bruce Willis's performances. And I loved Steve Buscemi's performance. He plays the same role and everything, but it was fun in this.
Mm-hmm.
We even have the Rush guy. I think his name's Peter Strauss is the actor, I think. Peter Stormare. He's the Russian, and he's like, I love everybody. There are other little bits of plays playing in this. Yeah. What can I say about it? Now, there are some stupid things, yeah. If you put logic into it, like when they're in space, when something explodes, there's no flames. There's no fire in space.
And it's not even the technical aspects of it that a lot of people like to rip apart and go, well, that's not realistic. It's a fucking movie, right? Here's my thing. I don't mind it being a popcorn flick, and the fact that I prefer my disaster flicks to leave you with a sense of awe and wonder, like, don't screw with nature, because I think that's the ultimate message that we should have. Not, hey, it's a metaphor because we're killing the planet or these kind of things and you should know better. Not preachy messaging, just nature's more powerful than us. Deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Here they try to do it as a heroic thing, but my problem with this movie starts in the first 5 to 10 minutes. Obviously, we get this set up in outer space where it's kind of horrific. You know, we see the astronaut meet an untimely demise. And for the time, I will say that the effects aren't bad, right? We talked about that a little bit with Volcano, right? About how that's a pro and a con with it. But for me, what I didn't like was how they tried making it kind of goofy and silly in a really joking kind of sort of way with like Eddie Griffith and the dog and all these street scenes and stuff. And it's like, I want to see Paris demolished like every normal American, right? Or, you know what I'm saying? The disaster scenes. I'm half joking here around the world to give you a sense of it. And to have somebody like Michael Bay, who does work with scale in a lot of his films really well, to me, that was just the more fun or interesting parts of the film. But it just felt completely manufactured. I had zero buy-in for any of these people. They were trying too hard to make it sound like they were going to be fun and then turn heroic. And it doesn't work for me because you start off with a compelling setup, and then you just kind of shit on with goofy stuff in the first 5 minutes. That's horrible to me.
I disagree. You actually see bodies falling from when the asteroid hits the top of that building and the building falls down. You're seeing people falling and dying. Do they even still do that anymore after 9/11? I don't think they even do that anymore because that's disturbing. But as far as Eddie Griffin being there, comedy kind of thing, it's no different than watching Independence Day. If you hate that movie, you're gonna hate this movie.
You know what? You are right, because I'm not a fan of either.
Yeah.
But at least Independence Day, we've got it's July 4th. Now it's our turn. You know, and this you're like, oh my God, okay, let me mark out for that.
This is basically like in the right around the same type of movies as Space Cowboys. You know, these are not to be taken serious. These are kind of like you're jokingly kind of like, but there's also a drama in there. You're dramedy, I'd say. But I mean, the cast though, you have Billy Bob Thornton, Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler, Steve Buscemi, Will Patton, William Fichtner, who's a really awesome actor, Owen Wilson, Michael Clarke Duncan, Peter Stormare. You even have Keith David in here.
Yes,
who's also Volcano.
And he's great in these kind of roles too. You just, when you don't expect him, when you get somebody like him, and you're like, damn it, that's a good addition, right?
And Ken Hudson Campbell, who was popular in the 90s, he kept popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
So I forgot about that actor. But he's been in Groundhog Day, Down Periscope, Home Alone, you know. So yeah, like I said, you had this huge cast. I imagine the budget was probably the budget was only $140 million, but it walked away with $553 million.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm not saying it wasn't successful.
I know. I'm just saying. Well, that's the thing. You know, it's like it's a controversial movie. There's a lot of people that don't like it. There's a lot of people that do like it. I mean, honestly, I could go by without watching it again. You know, we did it for the review. It's not one of my favorite movies from the 90s, but it's there. It's kind of like watching Judge Dredd. You're gonna watch it, maybe do it for a review of it, but it's not something you can watch over and over again. Same with Congo. Same with a lot of these early 90s movies. You know, it's just they're there. Honestly, we're talking about doing Street Fighter on Tuesday. That's possible. No, but I mean, these are all categories to me as fun bad movies.
Right.
Yeah, well, these are Oscar worthy. Yeah.
Yeah, that we talked about as far as themes goes. Like we talk about the changing guard of action films in the 80s, from the personal to the explosive and all that too, and how you lose something in there. And I also mentioned too, just again, being an 80s kid and you're the 90s kid, is that in the 80s we had a lot of popcorn stuff that was just kind of silly and goofy, but it did capture some of the spirit of the time, some of the fun stuff. And that's why some of the, like, say, sexual romantic rom-coms of the 90s were prevalent, because it was a lighthearted look at, like, trying to lose your virginity or score with the opposite sex, just whatever. And those things are always things that you're interested in. We had some nice little revenge and bullying type stuff in the 80s, but in the 90s, when we talk about things changing a lot, one thing that's definitely missing is that physical type hero, because we don't have a lot of martial arts. Van Damme was so coked out of his mind in doing these kinds of movies. It's not like the first movies that everyone really was like, hey, this is really cool, I'm buying into him. He became almost a caricature of himself. And the problem with this movie is, while it's got a great cast, I think by this time budgets were starting to get to be 100 million plus. They're starting to throw CGI on it. You did have this little thing in the back of everybody's head, because it was in the mainstream at the time, at least here in America, about the end of the decade, the end of the millennium, all that kind of stuff. And so there was an aspect of what's going to happen and all that. And I don't mind a cataclysmic type event, but again, if you're going to have it and be an action film or be a drama, be that. Don't be too cute with it or too funny. And we want to see heroes suffer, because there's through their suffering they gain the courage to act appropriately with whatever that action's going to be in the right moment. And here, like I said, you don't really have that, in my opinion.
These guys are like the bad news bears, pretty much, going up into space to try and do something that. Something that
blow up that fucking.
I gotta ask though. This is 1998. How old are you when you saw this?
I'm in my mid to late 20s, sir.
So I saw this when I was 13 years old. So that's why I probably liked it more than you did.
You know what? And you're absolutely right.
Because you've seen more stuff. You're at that more older age. You expect better. Me, this was a great 13-year-old me watching this. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yep.
I love the asteroids coming down, going through this. But the funny thing is, as now that I think about watching that scene again, I'm thinking of Dark Side of the Moon Transformers, where they're in Chicago and all the same thing. People, he literally just used the same footage, and So, but at this point, like I said, I still can sympathize with everything that's going on, especially at the very end where Harry sacrifices himself, or he finally, like I felt like the whole story is basically, it's not even an asteroid. It's more about Ben Affleck's character getting along with Harry, Bruce Willis.
Yep.
Yeah, and at the end, he finally earns his respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, that's what it's just wrapped in a doomsday plot.
Exactly.
Like, honestly, you could have had Bruce Campbell in this. This is a made-for-TV bad budget movie. It's like watching Broken Arrow, but there's something about it I just like about it. It's hard to pinpoint down, but I mean, like I said, I liked all the jokes in here. Like, they're cheesy. Yes, it's not meant to be a serious movie. It's not like Tears of the Sun.
You're right, and it's not. How do we say it? It's not. I don't find anything about this movie particularly offensive. The language, any stereotypes, anything like that, some people might get turned off by or whatever. Things have changed over the years.
The guy who discovers the asteroid, he's like, I want to know my wife. She's a fucking bitch, and I hate her, Dottie. Like I laugh every time I hear that see that scene, because the guy is like, she's like, I'm not your slave, and he yells at her, and she quick runs away. Like there's little bits of humor in here that I laugh at. There, like I said, I like stupid humor stuff. I like one of my favorite movies is Dumb and Dumber. And I honestly, Dumb and Dumber, some people love it. Some other people don't like the humor.
Love me some Dumb and Dumber. But here's the thing that, one of the reasons why we talked about bringing this film up is we put up a vote because we've got some new subscribers lately here. Yeah. We're revisiting how we're approaching some things. So I think it's interesting. But you and I have been doing a lot of action films on here. We do films of all the different categories, old,
martial arts,
everything, you name it. And so we said, you know what? Hey, let's do something that's more in what you were growing up in, which is what we would call cheesy, B-level action films. That's not a knock, but that's what you and I backstage were going, that seems to be what the 90s was. I don't know. Let's throw some out there. Let's see what's going on.
The 90s was bad CG movies, disaster movies.
Yeah.
Deep Impact. Morgan Freeman was in every freaking movie.
That's awesome.
Chain Reaction, and you had Keanu Reeves before it didn't go into The Matrix, till 1999? I think The Matrix came out, the first one.
I don't know, maybe 2000. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this. I'm going to compare this movie to something other that came out, I think, in late 98, and that would be Titanic. And here's why I'm comparing the two. Both of them were big budget movies. James Cameron, obviously known for Terminator and other things too. People were very interested in what he was going to do with Titanic. There had been talk about it, but the thing that was happening in the mid to late 90s, especially late 90s, is the internet really got widely adopted. Even if you had your 24 or 48-bit dial-up modem type things, or depending on if you had access to a workstation at college, you'd have higher speeds and such, and business, of course. You started seeing a proliferation of things off screen before a movie would come out that you didn't really have then. So everyone was like, oh my God, this guy's making this big budget movie. He's the same guy who did this. What's he going to be like? And regardless of how you feel about James Cameron politically and what he likes to say, message you what his movies are about, agree or disagree. Technically speaking, the dude's always, for the most part, been cutting edge and did it. So when Titanic came out, despite the use of CGI in there, I think he did a much more masterful job of making it look like he added some accents to certain things too. And regardless of how dopey or cheesy or how bad you might think Titanic is, or everyone go, Jack, you could still fit on the raft. So there was something emotional that caught a lot of people, and it just grew legs, and you can't manufacture that. You know, the closest you can get to something manufacturing that would be the Barbieheimer thing from last year, right? And that really wasn't about the movies. It was about the event, to go see it. I think here in this movie, the thing that Michael Bay does do well, and I mentioned earlier, I want to compare it to Godzilla -1 from last year, is that if you look at Gareth Edwards' 2014 Godzilla, you don't see Godzilla until about halfway through the movie. You only get like a quick leg shot of it. And I love it because the point that you mentioned there, the movie really is about earning the respect of, you know, in this case, the father, Bruce Willis's character, and all that too. You're absolutely nailed it. And I think without saying that, it doesn't give the movie what it deserves. Michael Bay does a great job, I think, with the sense of scale and things hitting it. So you know what, Michael, you do you flex it, you do that kind of shit. That's what you're strong at. Make the movie centered around that. And he does do that. And you're right. It is kind of cheesy. It is like a Bad News Bears. I like your description of it. I wouldn't have thought of it that way. It is supposed to be lighthearted. It's what was there in the 90s. And we'll see if this theme kind of continues with other 90s movies that we'll be reviewing here in the future on Extreme Movie Show. But to me, it's just one of those movies like, okay, I saw it. I don't need to see it again unless I'm not looking at it from a certain perspective. And when we have these kind of conversations, when people make notes and you say things there too, it's kind of why we do what we do here, to kind of pick and choose and talk about what we like and don't like.
Yeah. So I want to point out that this might be Michael Bay directing it. The guy also directed The Rock 2 years prior to this, which is a fantastic movie.
People love The Rock.
Yes. It was J.J. Abrams that wrote this with a couple of different writers.
Interesting, because some people did not like how we treated Star Wars, and that's not a conversation we've really had.
Yeah. This apparently this also, I guess apparently this was a counterpart movie to Deep Impact by Disney. I guess it's Disney produced this, or it was not a Walt Disney movie or something like that. I was reading up on that. Yeah, it says, like, you know, according to Bruce Joe Rubin, director of Deep Impact, the production president at Disney took notes on everything the writer said during lunch about his script and initiated Armageddon as a counter film at Disney.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
So like, okay, honestly, I've watched Deep Impact, but I like this better than Deep Impact.
That's a different kind of film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely. I agree with you.
You know, so like I said, yes, this could be a try too hard movie, but for me though, it works. It's, you know, it's not the best movie, but it is an entertaining movie. You know, you're gonna watch it once. This isn't a movie you're gonna go around and be like, oh, this is the best movie ever, the 90s, and blah blah blah. It's like, there's people out there who said Napoleon Dynamite's freaking awesome, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? But it made money. It's everybody's different. Everybody's opinions, and like I said, if you don't like this, I don't know what to do. You know, don't watch it. Find something else. Same thing I do when I find movies. But honestly, going from Die Hard to doing something like this was a little different for me for a stretch, because I really love Die Hard. I don't like the third movie, but I like the first two.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get Hudson Hawk, was another big flop. But I like that movie. That was great.
Hudson Hawk's fun.
1-800, how's my driving?
You got the power.
But even that movie was really cringy bad, you know, trying too hard. You know, it was like we're trying to watch Roger Rabbit with Bruce Willis, you know, in there. So honestly, I enjoyed this movie. It's a one and done for me though, like most films, and that's okay. The movie's meant to entertain you, and that's why I don't line up buy a lot of movies. I go watch them, and then I don't need to hold on to a collection of them. Now, the only reason I would say if you're going to get this in physical print or physical DVD or VHS is because pretty soon these movies are gonna go away. You know, with streaming rights. You know, I think this was you can watch it through Disney Plus or Hulu right now. I watched it on Daily Motion, but I also have it on VHS somewhere.
Right, and you know, one of the things is we don't really pride ourselves on keeping everybody up to date on the latest and greatest when it comes to movie news. We're not an aggregate site or discuss those things there too. I know that we like to say here, because you're in the Midwest and I'm here in Florida, you know, what we have access to. We never want to tell anybody to do anything illegal. Obviously, we're on YouTube and we're very filtered in what we can and should say and all that. And that's just by choice. But again, you and I just go live and we roll it. We decide it. We don't really prep anything. And that's kind of the raw nature of the show. And I think you point out some interesting things about this film too, because you know what? We can say that the movie tries too hard. You can say that it's kind of lighthearted popcorn film fun. That's exactly what it is. And if that's your thing and you like it, more power to you. I kind of wish there was more movies like this. And I hate to say it because I'm not a big fan of this film, but that's one of the things I said about the 80s. And when I started this channel like 4 or 5 years ago and people started listening and you and I started talking and Pixel, the young 20-something that does just stuff with us, it's interesting because we all have these different generational perspectives, right? And compared to what's out there today, it's like, oh my gosh, Armageddon seems like it's a class above. And that really says a lot about what's out there today in terms of quality and availability.
So basically Bad Boys was another one he directed back in 95. And according to IMDb, it's only got a 6.8, which is and Armageddon has a 6.7 for people liking it. I never cared for Bad Boys. I know a lot of people like Bad Boys. I'm just not a big Will Smith fan. You know, he was all right. I could tolerate him in Independence Day, but it was Jeff Goldblum that I liked in Independence Day. And what was the other one? Dennis Quaid. Those and Bill Pullman. Those are the stars. You know, you could have put anybody in there.
Well, let's not forget too, one thing that you and I briefly talked about with some of these 90s movies, that one thing that is different, not just the pop culture at the time, but the fact that technology speaking wise, you had the advent of the secondary market, right? So movies were not playing as long in theaters, and you could find out within 2 or 3 weeks what kind of money they were making, that they would throw a little bit more in advertising to milk at that 3rd or 4th week, and then you start seeing the theater counts. And so this feedback loop would happen on itself. So if that first week Armageddon did pretty well, or did supposedly above what people thought it was going to be, well then, hey, great, that so people might go see it because now it's a thing to go see, right? That was a phenomenon that was somewhat, in my opinion, not necessarily unique, but relatively new and fresh, that you would happen and you would go see something because it's the thing to do. And instead of like remaking movies and all that, which of course is commonplace now with everything, I think that when people go, oh my gosh, Armageddon had $100 million budget, but it needs to make $200 million to break even here, and it only opened with a $60 million in it, so it's therefore, well, as soon as you say that after week one, as a movie is something, you're screwed. And so you see even more of an emphasis, especially now today with the big tentpole movies, placed on just getting it right where it makes just enough those first few weeks. Otherwise, you're screwed. But when it's like, hey, Armageddon only cost $200 million, it's got an all-star stellar cast, people are saying it's a lot of fun, it made more than it did, people are gonna be like, huh, maybe I'll go check that film out. Because again, at the time, that perception of what other people think about does make people want to go see a film. And back then, I don't know what your viewing habits were. I know for me, if I were going to go to the movies, I wouldn't say see 2 or 3 or 4 movies at a time, but I wanted to make sure if a movie I was seeing was going to be good, something I would like, something other people kind of liked, then I'd be like, okay, let me go check it out. Then maybe I'd want to go see something else too. So it was an exciting time, but definitely movies were changing. And just obviously from the disaster movies we've already covered with Earthquake and a few others from the 70s, you know, and all that, this is not really what I would call a disaster film. It's absolutely what you said it is. It's really, I don't even want to call it a drama because it's a little lighthearted to me, right? But it is about him trying to gain the respect of Bruce Willis. That's a very good way of describing it.
I mean, there's other things here too. You got Will Patton, you know, goes to see his ex-wife, you know, he's restraining order. He's not allowed to see his son, you know, and you know, just wants to make amends, you know, before, because a lot of them know they're probably not going to come back from this, you know.
Right.
And like I said, like if those who like really like space stuff, I would recommend go watch The Expanse. That's probably one of the best space shows that's been on TV or cable and or streaming in the past couple years. And it's no secret, I'm not a big Star Wars fan or Star Trek, but I really like The Expanse. How a lot of it was just basically in space. That's all it was. There was no Red Sharks Enterprise. These are guys with a little rocket. Shooting rail guns at each other. But as far as like, this is like, whenever I see like the astronaut, like, oh, we lost so and so, and it's broke, I'm like, it's actually be compressed, you know, whatever, you know, the gases, the science behind it. They'll tell you what happens in space, you freeze up, you know. And there was none of that. It wasn't too gory, so they kind of kept it, like I said, as a family popcorn movie.
We have here.
Had this been like more serious, it would have been like Event Horizon.
Yeah, you're right. And so you have to decide what you're going to be, and at least you know what. At least you know what kind of film you're getting. It's not a bait and switch, right?
No.
here in Central Florida, I remember at the time, a couple years before that, we have a small dinner theater here in a place, technically it's called Mainland. It's in the Winter Park area, but near Central Florida. It's called the Enzion. It's where I see a lot of films. I put some pics up on some of our earlier broadcasts of me scurrying around. But I remember seeing a movie with what I thought was an interesting looking young woman named Liv Tyler in it. And it was called Stealing Beauty. And I didn't realize at the time that I think that's, from Aerosmith, Steve Tyler's daughter. And so sometimes you get an actor or an actress that's from a line of somebody that might be in another field, like Dario Argento's daughter, Asia Argento's been in a lot of her movies, and she's interesting if you're in the horror and that kind of stuff, and we'll be getting into that later here on the Extreme Movie Show. But for me, I remember going, okay, she has an interesting look about her. She's just not your typical, big haired, gum chewing 80s, person that you would see on the screen. And you think that's all that existed, right? So I remember she was like the hot ticket item in this film about her or whatever. So I was going to ask you, as a 13-year-old kid at that time, what was your take on her?
Liv Tyler? Watching it, I thought she was attractive in here. I thought she was kind of cute. I thought that Ben Affleck was actually a decent actor in this. Obviously he's matured as he's got, as he's gotten more of his career and stuff. Mm-hmm. Especially if you saw him as Batman. He actually put the serious effort into it. He wasn't so.
I actually what was it, The Accountant? Because that's kind of weird, but I did. I thought it was a good film.
Because at 13, I also watched Mallrats, and I'd seen Ben Affleck in that too. So I was like, wow, it's like he's actually putting effort in it, unlike Daredevil, which was horrible. But Celtic Jill is saying says I get a kick out of the Armageddon where the demands were read students be space boys. For instance, no paying taxes the rest of life. Dude, yeah. And then the thing with Steve Buscemi is he's like it's just in Con Air. He's like, we're all gonna die. We're gonna die. It's, like I said, I love this. There's always that kind of person on there, no matter what it is. And I said, Steve Buscemi plays that role perfectly. The one things I noticed that this time is when the cop show up, he's like, here, he's like, I thought she was of age. Like the pedo jokes, I was like, whoa! I don't remember that being in there. He's did it twice. At first, he's like, because he's apparently when Liv Tyler was talking to her husband or her father, Harry Bruce Willis, he's like, Steve Buscemi. It's he's like, you were around. He had to show me he got me my first Tampa and showed me how to use it. And he's like, whoa, I did not show her how to use it. I'm like, what is going on here? It's like, and then the second when at the oil rig, when the military shows up, he says hey, I thought she was of age, They were making a lot of pedo jokes. And I was like, whoa, you made that today? You're canceled. There's no way that'd fly. But Michael Clarke Duncan, I liked his character too. Like I said, when they're rounding them all up, it was kind of funny too. I was like, I like that scene, But she also brought up what is it? Con Air. You guys are talking in the chat. Con Air. Con Air is another movie I have a guilty pleasure for it. Don't touch the bunny. Because I there's no secret, I'm a fan of John Cusack's early movies, and I liked watching Nicolas Cage too. So to me, that was a good movie. But
I don't want to say this like I'm shitting on the 90s, because obviously it's interesting to hear all these perspectives. But when you mentioned earlier, we were talking about I mentioned Cable Guy with Owen Wilson in it too. Cable Guy has another actor that seemed like he's in everything, and he's still around today. And I look at it and go, I'm not going to say the guy doesn't have talent. I'm not saying there's not a role that he can't serve. And you know what? I'm pretty liberal when it comes to those kinds of things. If you can make money doing something, more power to you, no matter how good or how bad you are. And that would be Jack Black. I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't pretend to understand it. But that's one of the things that we and I talk about here on the show. We talk about themes, how it's related to other stuff, give our perspective. Look, because I'm not a big fan of this movie, I'm not saying it's not a good movie. I'm saying it may work for you if you're like this kind of a film. Here's how I'm seeing it. And here's how you see it. And we try to come up with other examples. And that's kind of the interesting thing about it, is because you're right. A movie can make a lot of money. It doesn't mean it's a good film. I could hate a movie. It doesn't mean it's not going to make a lot of money or not be a good film. So there's always these combinations. I think a lot of people are like, this movie sucks. It doesn't deserve to make money because, well, I don't want to put that kind of judgment on this. This was a movie that is pretty much well described the way you said it there too. It is lighthearted film. It's pretty cheesy. Not necessarily my kind of film. Some of these films I thought were just trying to be big for sake of being big, and I felt like they didn't know how to be impactful. No pun intended here. I'm sure we'll get to Con Air and The Rock and other ones up there too. But again, to kind of remind everybody as we're starting to close up here a little bit, the idea of this film was that you guys voted on it. And so we had no idea what to expect. We did try to, I think, keep it as a 90s theme, if I'm correct, RDV. I know Tuesday we've got something maybe picked out. So do you want to take a moment to talk about Tuesday and maybe what might be on the plate for the vote for next week?
Oh, for vote for next week? Well, there's quite a few different movies. We never really agreed. I don't think we ever agreed on them, but I know I was looking at some of the Clint Eastwood Western movies. But if you want to do more disasters movies, I don't mind doing Dante's Peak for maybe next Sunday, but I'll put it in there. I was also been looking at as far as basically sports movies. They're thrillers like The Fan or Sudden Impact. But
right. The idea was
or The Fugitive.
Keep the 90s, yeah. So whether it was action or like you say, sports or that we're trying to keep it to a theme to that too. So that'll be interesting. But guys, check out the vote for that. We had over 200 votes for the very first time we did this vote, because we tried it a few times to get a lot of responses, so we kind of held off, and we were well over 100 just even on a shortened holiday week for this one here. That's pretty impressive to me, especially about 1,100 subs, getting over a 10% return on that. Tremendous. So we're gonna keep doing it, see how that goes.
Yeah, because I'm looking at other movies that came out there on the 90s. Was The Shadow, The Phantom, Spawn.
Yeah, you're right. All those, The Crow. Yeah. I mean, these are all 90s things. Yeah.
Spy movies. You had A Long Kiss Goodnight. You had The Saint, La Femme Nikita.
Yes.
And I was tempted to throw the Spy Game in there because it's technically not a 90s movie, but it's still awesome. You said like disaster movies. Obviously, I would love to do Twister again, do Twister. Mm-hmm. But I would also want to throw in Bruce Campbell's Tornado, which is the low budget version of Twister. But other movies too, for disaster movies, Hard Rain was not really a disaster movie, but it was more like a bank heist during, a flooding in New Orleans. Basically, they're in a hurricane. Like there's quite a different movies I was looking there. They came out in the 90s. Starship Troopers. There's also the
my goodness.
There's so many. So it's like for those who are watching this right now or watching the replay, just let us know down below which one, if you listen to those movies I just read off, what would you like to see? And just leave us recommendations. We're basically going through these, and the polls are nice because we get to see what people really want to actually us to review, and hopefully it pays off. The people that vote actually do show up. I would love to see 200 people show up and review and watch this. But 90s movies. There's so many of them. Just pick a genre, whatever you want us to do. Starship Troopers is great, dude. I love that. But
and that's where I'll nerd out, talk about Robert Heinlein's work and how it changed and some of the themes to it and all that. So sometimes we get silly. Like I like to talk about food and like clothing. Don't know why, I just do. Sometimes that stuff pops me, and then you'll talk about like the guns and some of the stunts and all that. We love the physical stuff there. We're really big into the physical performance of certain roles.
Like I said,
forget Zorro's tremendous.
Other ideas were like we'd pick an actor and I'd choose 3 movies, and like if you want to do Nicolas Cage, I'd pick 3 of his better movies that I think it is from early in the day, and then I'd also same with Clint Eastwood. If you wanted to do that, you could do, because we already did the Dirty Harry movies, but like there's more you can do. He has a lot of westerns to choose from. So I mean, I don't know what you guys are really in for. Like Total Recall was that's from the 80s, yes. What was the other one? You had The Running Man from the 80s. There's a lot of movies.
Lawnmower Man from the 90s.
Like I said, right now we're just focusing on the 90s, but eventually we will go back. We will go to the 80s.
Man's Best Friend.
Like I said, I'd even dare put Blade Runner on there.
Shockma, I know.
Shockma's a fun movie.
Shockma's tremendous.
Was it Man's Best Friend?
Yeah, I love when animals attack movies and disaster films. I just do.
What was the other one? Mars Attacks.
Yep, that was from the 90s as well. Yeah, there's some fun ones, and here's what's going to happen. And over the next month or so, as we get in the football season, Halloween's right around the corner. We'll try to do some stuff offline and get that going. So we sometimes will do like a series, or sometimes with the young 20-something Professor Pixel, who for lack of a better term, is ignorant, just doesn't know a lot of stuff, but he's got a tremendous amount of knowledge, and he's watched a lot of obscure things. He's the only guy that's watched all 1,225 episodes of the original Dark Shadows, and also we've covered every episode of Twin Peaks. It's the only show besides Columbo that we've done more than one season of. So we try to do like a European horror one. You don't like blood and guts, so we try to pick more of like a psychological thriller, whether it's Body Double or something like that, erotic stuff, all that.
The other thing is, I said, if we do 3 movies and Michael Bay movies, there's quite a few in here. Pearl Harbor, The Island, The Rock. I said, like, if we did, you could do Pearl Harbor, you could do Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few of them out there, but just let us know down in the comments down below what you guys are really looking forward to. Obviously, I've seen people are mentioning. Mars Attacks is one of the movies, like, I look at that, it's like, how Rob looks at this, it's like,
I loved Mars Attacks. That's a funny movie.
Yeah. But
Robinson Crusoe Mars, yeah. Antonio Banderas, I think the James Bond guy Hamilton directed that. That was fun. Versus Zorro the Gay Blade. I know Mariah just brought that up too.
We could do more space movies. There's Galaxy Quest. There's he said there's
Killer
Space
Clouds from
Cowboys.
Outer Space.
There's Red Planet.
Mm-hmm.
Ghost of Mars.
Mm-hmm.
So there's quite a few. But yeah, I said, let us know on the comment section after this is done airing, and let us know what you guys think genres we should do.
What's Tuesday night?
Yep, on Tuesday night I'm gonna put the poll up.
Okay.
So.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, guys, look for that. It should be up shortly there, too. And then we'll see you guys Tuesday night next week, too. As a programming note for some of you that weren't here before, we are continuing live Columbo Season 2, Episode 1 we just did. That's already up. We'll be doing Episode 2 next week. The reason why it's at 6:30 is because on a short and compressed schedule, we're fitting in our other show that we were doing Forever Night. So that will drop, I think, on a Thursday or Friday night. So that'll be an offline recording. We're continuing to do that. There'll be Professor Pixel night, too. So there'll be another night. We're trying to expand and do a little bit more. And so we juggle some things around based off of performance and what we have time for. So probably have a little bit more output here as Halloween and the holidays come up there, too. So look for those polls. I appreciate you guys showing up. Anything else you need to plug, RDV?
No, like I said, there's so many options. I'm looking at William Fichtner's movies. Like, we could just Black Hawk Down, Drive Angry. There's quite a few movies, like I said, from the 90s. Even
never a shortage of content. That's the beauty.
I know that's the great about it. I just gotta know what you guys are interested in, because sometimes these are hit or miss.
Yeah.
But we gotta think for those who have at least been subscribing and also showing up. Salty Joel, it's great to see you interact with the channel. Marani as well, and Dave. Great to see you guys here. So,
good night, everybody. See you Tuesday.
Yeah. Have a good night, guys.
Good night now.